All right, here we go. So today I wanted to address a topic that you may know what it is when I explain it to you, but you might not know what the technical name for it is. So what we're going to talk about today is something that is nothing is required. Nothing's not required. But this topic, this concept that we're going to talk about today is a concept that if you accept the invitation to really, really delve into the topic we're going to talk about, then, and I would say, and only then, can you really transcend the world of the illusion, the egoic mind. And that is when you have a perceived awakening, a perceived enlightenment, right? So it is what? It's important. That we're going to talk about today is important. It's vital, and it's necessary if awakening from the dream state is something that you are determined to do. I will just say that. Okay? If you don't know what I do, if you're new, I speak on non-duality topics, right? So that's what I think I said I'm a Course in Miracles student and teacher for 40 years, which is a non-dual teaching. And so anyway, okay, so the topic for today is something called memento mori. Memento mori. So memento mori is something that has been around since the Greeks. The Greeks basically put it together. Okay, so is anyone here familiar with memento mori? I would say that a lot of people, you're familiar with it, but you don't know the name of it. Anyone here? So memento mori is really something that the term was coined by the ancient Greeks. Now, I have some notes here that I'm looking at. The direct translation of memento mori is, remember, you must die. I'll say it again. Remember, you must die. So memento mori is the philosophy that asks you, invites you, encourages you to face death, And it's a concept that everyone has heard of. Like I just said, everyone has heard of. The Greeks really, well, some specific Greeks really, 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 really did live by this principle, memento mori. So I want to read a little quote by Michel de Montaigne, and it's a little quote which helps too. I'm going to just read this really quickly. To practice death is to practice freedom. A man who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. I'm going to say that again. This is Michel de Montaigne. To practice death is to practice freedom. A man who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. Now, if you don't know how to die, what would you be a slave to? I will give you a clue, which is the answer, and it is tattooed on my arm. A slave to what? Write it in the chat. Fear. How about faith? So, what Montaigne is saying here is that you will never be free until you accept death. Until you accept death. And this is one of the things that's so important. So, what happens in the illusion, in the separated state, is that every fear, I don't care if it's fear of wearing the wrong color, a fear of jumping out of an airplane, the fear of the unknown, the fear of whatever. If you keep going back further and further in that fear, whatever that fear is, I don't care what it is, and if we were here, I could help you to understand this. Every fear is the fear of death. Every fear is the fear of death. Because if you keep going down, 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 you will eventually go, well, because then I'll die. Because then I'll die. I'm afraid of jumping, obviously, I'm afraid of jumping out of a plane because I could die. I'm afraid of public speaking because then people will judge me. And then if people judge me, then I'll feel like shit. And then I'll feel like shit. Then I won't get a job. Then I won't get a job because then if I don't get a job, I'll have no money. And then if I don't have no money, then I'm going to die. Whatever it happens to be. It will all trace back to the fear of death. In the Course in Miracles, like I was saying earlier, the Course in Miracles would say, I'm paraphrasing right now, Course in Miracles would say, really, really, really look at how many decisions you make in a daily, hourly, monthly, yearly, lifetime basis that is all based on making sure that this stays alive. There's nothing, and let me say this, if you don't know me, there's nothing wrong and there's nothing right with what we're talking about. We're just talking about how things work in the illusory world. So if you think about how many things in your life are built around making sure that your body doesn't die, it means that so many things are built on very deep, the unconscious fear of death. Take a deep breath. We're trying to control the egoic mind, is the separated self, trying to control fate. It's trying to control that if you don't do this, then you'll get this, or whatever. But ultimately, it's trying to control staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive, staying alive. I had to say that. I had to do that. So, this is what memento mori starts to look at with you. In A Course in Miracles, I didn't even realize I was going to talk about Course in Miracles this much, but it talks about it all the time. Course in Miracles continues to, it doesn't always say this. I mean, it always says it, but one of the most challenging aspects can be for many people in A Course in Miracles is to really, 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 really accept that you are not a body. To really accept that you're not a body. When you really accept you're not a body, then death means nothing. It doesn't mean anything at all. It's like changing clothes, right? You know, it's like, oh, just changing clothes, just doing the next thing, right? And that is very, very difficult. So let's go more into memento mori and what the Greeks taught and later on, right? They would state that you're going to die anyway. What does everyone say? There's only two things for sure in life, death and taxes. So you're going to die anyway, right? It's only a matter of when you're going to die. And that simple fact is that it's, how do I want to put this? I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. The simple fact that you are going to die is one of the simplest, truest, closest things to you, but it's one of the things that you push farthest away from you, unconsciously. Some people consciously, some people consciously. Think about people that are obsessed, I'm not talking about being a healthy person, obsessed with exercising to make sure that they stay healthy, live as long as they can, whatever happens to be, right? the anti-aging world. You know what I mean? Making sure that you're like, oh, I don't want to look old. I don't want to look old. I want to whatever, and everywhere in between this. So there's this whole thing about making sure that you stave off death as long as possible. And at the same time, you're going to die. Everyone watching me here is going to die. That's the fact. That is the fact. Now, when we start to equate our story of our life, I just thought of a song, I'm not going to sing it. The story of our life with our death, many times it can be very, very scary because all you know is the story. All you know is the story of your father, your mother, your kids, your grandkids, your lineage, your home, your culture. That's all you know. You only know the story. That's all you know is the story. So when all you know is the story, the prospect of that story, you never having the story again, and you even being the story, is petrifying. It's petrifying. Now, you've all heard, feel the fear and do it anyway. Face your fears, right? I always tell my students, if we discover a big fear, I'm like, you got to go right into that. You have to go into that. So this is what the Greeks were saying, is that if you begin to go into and accepting death, completely accepting death, what you will find, like what Montaigne says, is that you will find a freedom. And I'm not talking here about this idea about just accepting death and going, okay, I'm going to die. No, I'm talking about something much deeper and much more significant and profound, right? And that's what they were really teaching, the ancient Greeks in memento mori, is that there is a level to which if you make death your best friend and you walk with death every day and you bring death with you to every event, in every relationship, your fear will go away. Your fear will evaporate like mist, because every fear is the fear of death. That's what it is, right? So first, I'll just have a couple of notes here I'm going to read, and then we'll take, if anything's coming up, if you're new here, please put it in the chat, because we're going to have a conversation. So please put it in the chat. So I have a couple of things. There's so we try to minimize death, right? So there's more ways, but I'm going to give you three. First, we push death off into the distant future. We go, well, I don't have to worry about that because it's going to happen when I'm like 90. And we all know that that's not true, because you don't know. You have no idea. So you push it off into the future. Like, that is something I can deal with later, right? And then you get to the point, well, this is when people get to the point and then like, oh shit, I didn't really deal with this. Now I got to deal with it. Just deal with it now. Don't push it off into the future, right? Another way that we kind of reduce death is that we will, now this is going to be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. We write it off like you don't really die. You don't really die. There's an afterlife. Now, listen, I'm not here to say anything's right or wrong. I'm just here to give you a few ways that we don't deal with death. We start to create, because no one, I guarantee you right now, and some people are, this will be controversial, what I'm going to say right now. No one can guarantee what happens after you die. No. There are people that have had near-death experiences that have come. I've had a near-death experience. You can look through my YouTube and you can listen to the whole thing. But no one can guarantee you what happens after you die. So another way we don't deal with death is that we create another story about what happens after you die. about what the afterlife is. You're going to heaven, you're going to hell. You become pure spirit. You go back into energy. I don't know what it is. There's 50 million of them. 50 million of them, right? Rebirth, karma. You come back as a dog. You come back as a better person. This is a big one. You come back as a better person with more money because you were very good in this life. There's that one too, right? Right. A third way, these are just three ways. The third way that we don't deal with death is that we stay in constant distraction. You don't really deal with it. You're like, oh, I got this to deal with. I got that to deal with. I got my job. I got my kids. I got that. What, it doesn't matter. You keep saying that ultimately, I just don't have time. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't do psychological work, because they're just like, oh, it's too busy. It'll all work itself out. Really? Okay. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And I'm going to say one thing and then we'll open it up. Just one more thing. And this is another controversial thing, but I'm going to say it anyway. Religion and spirituality exist. They exist to serve our need to deny death. Religion and spirituality exist to serve our need to deny death. Think about that for a moment. Now is when you can put anything, I mean, you could put anything before, but put in, and we're just going to talk now about, for the rest of the time, about this. L. Hello, L. L. Just curious, did your near-death experience have to dissolve any of your own fear if you still had any before the experience? It's very interesting, L. My near-death experience was incredible. It was amazing. It was incredible. And it did change. I have been teaching, all this stuff for many years. It was about 10 years ago that it happened. I almost died. I got very sick and I almost died. It's a longer story, but it didn't dissolve anything. It confirmed what I knew, what my intuition knew, and what I already knew very, very deep down inside. It confirmed that it's about freedom. That once, I referred to this before, that this is all a story, right? So it's all stories. There's a story going on here. There's a story going on over there. There's a story there. There's a story there. There's all these stories, right? So when the death thing happens, it happened to me. Well, I'm going to tell you very quickly. I knew something was wrong. I'm not going to go through the whole, maybe I'll take a time here and do that again. I knew, my consciousness knew something was wrong. Something is wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. I had that feeling something was wrong with me. And then suddenly something switched and I thought, it's not me, it's my body. Something's wrong with my body. Oh, I'm just doing the Reader's Digest version. And then I said, oh, it's just my body. And as soon as that permeated, that it was just my body, there was complete freedom, total freedom like you've never felt in your life. I didn't see a tunnel. I didn't see anyone coming to get me. I didn't hear my past relatives. There was just an expansive, I can't even explain it. Freedom is what it's talking about. I mean, that I'm talking about. And from then on, and it's about that started changing me, and things started to happen. And then the last couple of years, it's a whole different 3 years, whole different ball game for me now. Thank you. Okay, Grace, I've been coincidentally watching your near-death experience story on YouTube this week. How crazy. That's interesting. You're welcome, L. So what are people thinking about this memento mori, about facing death? No one wants to talk? This is a conversation. Nothing. Nothing. Hello, Allison. I think most people are not ready, so it's hard to accept. You're right, Allison. Were you here from the beginning? I kind of addressed that. It's true. Because the separated self does not want to deal with that. Of course not. It doesn't want you to deal with that at all. It'll push it off. It'll deny it. It'll, like those 3 ways I said. There's more than that. There's more than that. Yash says, not thinking about myself as a body has been helpful, but it is another way to address fear. Well, it's beginning. It's the beginning thing, Yash. So everybody, within the Course in Miracles says, use time as a learning tool, right? So in the separated self, time is real. So use it as a building block to be like, okay, well, at least I'm starting to disconnect that attachment to the body. That's the beginning. Don't worry. Just keep going in that direction and just keep going in that direction. Go further. Just keep going further. Yes, Jed. Jed would say further. Just go further. Just keep going. Nina says, my story is I would rather not think of it. That's your story. Most people wouldn't. That's the denial of death. That's exactly right. Grace says, I love talking about death. I usually make other people uncomfortable. Grace, you're like me. You're just like me. How to approach the subject without another immediately shutting down? Well, it's a personal thing. Listen, this is a personal thing for sure. I don't know. It has to organically come up. A lot of people don't want to deal with it. Of course, that's what I just talked about. Hello, Tiffany. Before I learned anything more, even if we gave into their fear and feared death for a day or 10 years, doesn't change anything, still going to die, so might as well be happy. That's a great way to look at it, right? Might as well be happy. Might as well laugh at it now. You're going to die. You are going to die. Everyone say, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. So what are practical ways of embracing the concept? This is the beginning of it. Start to realize that you're not a body, and start to realize that you're denying death. Just start realizing it. Those 3 things that I just stated kind of help, right? So make sure that you're not thinking, oh, it's always going to be, a lot of people start living when they realize I could die tomorrow. That's a big one. Don't get distracted. Focus on it and say, okay, I'm going to die. Accept it, accept it, accept it, accept it, accept it. Accept it, accept it, accept it. Right? Awesome. But if one can be accepting, maybe we can go about feeling content. Yes. Accepting death. That's kind of the whole point, Allison. But there's, like I said earlier, memento mori is not just going, well, of course we're going to die. There's a contemplative acceptance of the whole thing. And to trace, remember what I said earlier, that every fear is the fear of death? When fears begin to go away, when you address your fears, they might not look like death, but the fears start going down, guess what? Your connection with death becomes closer. Like I said earlier, the idea, the concept that you're best friends with death, that death is with you all the time. I know it sounds morbid, but that's true. And that statement that I just made, especially people here on this app, I want to say it again because I think it's really important. Religion and spirituality exist to serve our denial of death. Are you doing your spiritual thing because you want to live forever? Because that's the ego. Now, I'm not saying that you won't live forever, and I'm saying you will live forever. Why are you doing your spiritual practice? many people do their spiritual practice because they want to deny death, because here's a story that will work. Either karma or heaven or hell or whatever happens to be. Energy, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. It's giving you a story. It's replacing with another story. The truth is you don't know. Like I said earlier, no one knows. That is a universal thing all of us have, and it still hasn't been answered. And in the separated state, it won't be ever answered in the separated state. Well, there's no time, so it doesn't matter. If he says, or be in the good place versus the bad place. That's right. Oh, what's that comedy? That comedy with Ted Danson. The Good Place? Is that what we call it, The Good Place? It's great. I love it. Okay. Accept death. When you accept death, it's going to give definition to your life. That was good. When you accept death, it's going to give you definition to your life. You will live in ways that you never did before. People do it all the time. Okay, take a deep breath. Grace says, are people really enjoying themselves so much that they are scared of it being over? Or are they scared they'll die before they succeed? Yes and no and yes. Janine. Oh my God, my sister's name is Janine, but completely a different spelling. The only thing we can't change is change. That's right. Death is a change.